Welcome back to another episode of Filthy Hope. If it's your first time here, welcome. We're so glad you're with us. On this show, we spend time in the grey spaces where Jesus, life and culture intersect. I'm your host, Pastor Jonty, and I'm with my co-host, Rev Ness.
Wow. That was like an event, wasn't it?
Yeah, so we're actually recording this Tuesday after the Sunday just gone, which was our most recent live event.
Yeah, it took me 24 hours to get over that, brother.
Yeah, there's something about those live shows that just wipe me out.
Me too.
I slept for like 12 hours and had to take the day off.
Yeah, it's like full on, isn't it?
On Monday, yeah.
It's just a sense of like leaving nothing left on the floor. You know, you've just like, bam, it's all emptied.
Yeah.
It's that feeling, isn't it?
Yeah. So the chunk of today's episode is going to be the conversation we had at our live show with the two of us and Rev Phil Swain. But I guess I just want to also shout out once again the crew over at Evolve and Tamar Uniting.
Epic group of people.
Community for hosting us again. I think it's the third time we've been here, I think that's right. Yeah.
Just a great group of people. It's like, I always feel like it's walking into a family, a big family of beautiful people that love God and that are happy to be servants of Christ. And I love that. They just shower us with their generous time and energy to help us get this up and rolling when we do these events. And they are just a great group of people. Yeah.
So particularly shout out to all the people that helped.
Unreal.
Whether you're on the
so
band,
grateful.
Morgs helping with sound, all the people that help serve food, clean up, move chairs around.
Yeah, it's a big furniture removalist day, isn't it? It's massive.
Luckily, we didn't have to move all the pews back.
There was a bit of pewage going on. Phil did some pewage management.
To shift a whole bunch of people that have been to Tamar Uniting will know that main central room, big empty room full of pews. Luckily there was something happening in the worship centre in that room later this week that they were going to have to move the pews for anyway. So I think that was after you'd left actually.
Oh, there was no reset.
We were like, I think we're about to go, but do we have to set the pews up again?
No,
we don't.
Amen.
Hell yeah, let's go home.
That's good.
So thanks to everyone that helped out. It was a massive help.
Yeah,
we appreciate the
very
help
generous.
greatly. Yeah, and we look forward to no doubt going back.
Hope so. If they'll have us, brother.
I'm sure they will. It does feel like a little bit of a second home for Filthy Hope at this point.
Yeah, it feels really nice. And you're like the love child. They just love on you when you get there. I feel like the cheeky, naughty mummy that comes in on the side. I don't feel as loved, but I love them probably more than they love me.
That's not true. I'm sure that's not true. But before we dive into that, a couple of things. I guess first, we should do Event Central. We haven't done that in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, play the music.
So if you don't know what Event Central is, this is a segment that we do occasionally where one of us or usually both of us, it turns out, gets an opportunity to rant and rave about something that's been grinding our gears. I guess something that's been grinding my gears recently, and this is related to the topic of today's conversation that we're going to get into. Peripherally, around whenever there's big global events happening, newsworthy topics of conversation, I have often really great conversations about things. Like at time recording last night, my wife and I were at my parents' house.
Did you hear what you just said then?
My wife?
Yeah, my wife and I.
Didn't even do it with a Borat accent.
I know, it just like rolled off your tongue.
I'm starting to get used to it.
Oh my, wow. That's so cool. Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off. Say it one more time.
My wife and
so
I.
Cool. Such a grown-up thing to say, man.
I know.
So cool.
Yeah, man. Still not quite used to it. But
she said to me, my husband.
There you go.
I know. I kind of went, who's that?
Some lucky guy.
Some hottie.
Yeah. So we were at my parents' place for my younger sister's birthday. We had a dinner, all the, just family get together. And of course, what often happens, there's a lot going on in the world at the moment. We ended up having some pretty good conversation. Quite a good environment to have a conversation about global politics, conflicts that are going on, big social issues. people that you know and trust. What my Van Central about is today, some places where that often doesn't happen is online.
Yes.
I would say definitively, the worst place to have those conversations.
Oh, not cool.
And in the last, this has always ground my gears, but in the last couple of weeks, it's particularly pissed me off is it's not even the content of the discourse online that I'm seeing, but it's the way that the discourse is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I was listening to a podcast recently with two filmmakers and creatives that I admire greatly, Alex Garland and Neil Druckmann. People that are familiar with their work will be, if you haven't listened to that podcast, go and find it. It's incredible. But Alex Garland was talking about this idea that he is convinced that all of us live in a continual state of rolling hallucination, and that my vision of the world is completely obscured and different to your vision of the world. And that's why we can see the same event. So at time of recording, the US being involved in bombing 3 potential nuclear sites in Iran is one of the current things that's on everyone's mind. We can look at the same event and have completely different interpretations of what's happening.
Yes.
And what that leads to is a type of discourse that actually not only isn't constructive, but is actively destructive. Mm-hmm. Because we're not trying to communicate, we're just trying to convince the other person that my version of that hallucination is correct and yours isn't.
I love that.
And all it leads to, especially online, where often you're, restricted to a certain number of characters because you don't have space in a comment section to have a genuine conversation. It just almost immediately turns into people flinging shit at each other.
Yep.
And I don't know, I just feel like I have to turn it off, otherwise I get too pissed off.
Yeah, it's almost worth not engaging because it pisses me off as well, so I choose not to.
Yeah.
I've almost stopped posting what I think and feel now because actually I've realised that no one really does give a shit about what I think and feel.
And I'm convinced that even if it is something that you actually care about, as soon as you post it online, it actually doesn't exist anymore anyway because it's not real.
It's held by
just
somebody
pixels
else
on a screen.
Yeah, nice. Wow. Well, I had one of those interactions this morning, and it was so this morning in the middle of teaching scripture, the news came through that they have ended the 12-day war, and there is a ceasefire taking place between Israel and Iran, and America and the Middle East brokers have arranged this deal, and it was going to happen within 12 to 24 hours of once everybody had done their last organised bombage.
Called their jets.
Yeah, that's it.
Literally.
And I was coming out of my scripture class and I change over with the Judaism scripture class, and I love the woman that teaches Jewish scripture. She's epic, and I've known her for many years now, and we're really quite close and have shared lots. And she said, "What are you doing today?" And I said, "I'm doing a story about a sheep, babe." And she said, "Oh, who's the sheep?" I said, "Oh, Jesus, the sheep, the good shepherd." And she laughed. She said, "Oh, I know that one." And I said, "Oh, what do you do?" And we talked. She's in 10 Commandments at the moment. So we talked about that. I said, "Oh, that's a pretty good one, mate. Rock that out." And I said, "How are you going?" And she said, she alerted me to the fact that this had happened. And I had to be very careful what I said. You know that idea you said you can have robust conversation in your family at the dinner at Susie's birthday, and you feel safe to have the conversation there. So you do, and you can have the back and forth of dialogue, and you can be angry and mad or sad and happy, and it's all okay because it's within the confines of the family and you all love each other and respect each other. I realised that she has a very different take on what's just occurred.
Yeah.
To what I feel. And in that moment, I chose to not express what I felt, but I chose to just support her in her thoughts. And because I made a decision that anything I had to say in that moment was not going to be of any help whatsoever. But what could be helpful is to be abundantly full of empathy with her position and everything that she said, most of which I agreed, but I would have maybe – anyway, yeah, big Trump supporter.
Again, two people.
She is.
Yeah.
Yeah, did you get that?
I got that would have been a huge bombshell for you to drop about your own political.
Correct. Yeah. So I just had to. That's why I chose to keep my mouth shut.
Yeah.
And it actually saved relationship. It was like tears were in both our eyes as we felt relief about what's happened in the world today, and I think it was for the common good. A whole lot, you know, and I had to go and teach about sheep, and she had to go off and do the 10 Commandments. So nothing was to be achieved.
Yeah, and if you take the Alex Garland approach to looking at the world, it's two people that live incredibly close to each other in incredibly similar socioeconomic situations, who are literally teaching at the same school.
Yep.
Have two completely different views on the exact same event.
Yep.
And so it's not even a matter of being able to have dialogue, because the dialogue isn't aimed at the same thing.
No, a slightly different lens.
Yeah.
You know, and I could really appreciate to the best of my ability her lens, and that's why I just kind of thought there's no point. There's what's to be achieved here.
Yeah.
You know? And I'm richer for hearing her position, actually. It helps me understand.
Yeah.
You know?
I think, and again, I'm preaching to the choir, not only with you, but with our listeners. But if that conversation had happened online, there wouldn't be a face behind the words.
Yeah. And the shit that would have come out would have been angry.
Yeah.
I can just,
But because there's a face and a person and a soul and a story
Yeah.
behind those words,
Yeah.
you can then actually approach it with dignity and grace and empathy.
Yeah, that's right. And really be an empathetic witness to their position, her position.
Yeah.
Well, it was cool, but yeah, grinding your gears. I get
And it's
it.
when it happens on our own socials and YouTube channel and stuff like that. I always have to wrestle with, like, do I engage, or do I just let them do it in the comments, or do I delete? Like I've deleted stuff. Like we had Macaulay on the show. We've had Macaulay's been on the show twice now, but they were on the show recently, and that week I deleted 7 or 8 comments across different social platforms of people just being incredibly transphobic and hateful.
I'm really glad you did that.
Yeah.
And I love it but you don't delete the ones where they say I'm an asshole and I shouldn't be a minister. You keep those on there because it's good for our algorithm. And you know I'll get a giggle.
I often just screenshot it and send it to you anyway.
I love it. And I love sending it to my family. I hadn't realised what an asshole I was. Yeah. Just in case you didn't know.
Didn't realise I was Satan incarnate. But apparently I am. Cool.
Oh, that was a ripper, that one. That's right.
Yeah. No,
you can't get upset about that shit.
You've just got to laugh. And
I've just got to let it slide off.
Because it's not real. No. And that person would never say that to you if they were standing in front of you.
Probably not. Yeah, maybe.
Maybe, in which case they're a dickhead anyway, and who cares? Right. But like, it's not real. It's not real discourse. It's not real conversation.
Yeah.
And so it's a lesson for me that I'm constantly having to reteach myself in not stooping to the level and
that's
engaging and just reminding myself it's not real. It's all bullshit pixels on a screen.
I do like a bit of an engagement though, Jonty. I do get a bit of entertainment out of it.
Like, share and subscribe. All that stuff.
You're very funny.
Leave a comment, all that shit.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah, it's not real. It's not real. So that's my Van Central for this week.
I love it. Thanks for sharing.
So we're about to jump over to the majority of our conversation that was recorded in front of a live audience. Just to briefly introduce it, we do a little introduction in the recording as well. But just to introduce it before we dive over, we were talking a lot in the lead up about this concept of sanctuary. Do you remember why this even came up? Like, what was going on for us at the time that sort of led to that?
I remember us sitting. I can see us sitting there having the conversation. You came up with it and you said...
So I don't even remember that.
I do. Yeah, you were sitting. I can see you sitting on the lounge and I remember going, what an epic conversation about sanctuary in the midst of chaos. Where do you actually find the sanctuary? And the two of us just started riffing on that behind this wall.
Yeah.
We just went hard and we went, I think that's our topic for our next live event.
Yeah.
And it was just so good. I think there was a lot going on in the world. Well, it wasn't that long ago that we came up with the topic. It was in the last month.
Yeah.
and there was a lot of flux happening in the world, and it seemed like a perfect time to flesh that out theologically, spiritually, physiologically, all the different ways that we can find sanctuary in the midst of chaos. It was such a good conversation at the Live.
Yeah, it was one of those things where like we had such a rich conversation beforehand, not only about a month ago, but like that afternoon before we actually did it. But then when we sat down to chat in front of the audience, I kind of went, have we already exhausted everything that we, like, is this going to be rich enough to sustain a whole thing? And then it
we could have gone on and on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the audience participation was great. And we've got some questions that we didn't get time to address that we're going to pull up at the end.
Yeah, that's right. If you were there and we didn't answer your question live, I apologise. There are 4 pages of questions that
we're going to give it a bit of a crack at the end.
So we're going to go through some more at the end. Is there anything else we want to prime our audience with before we dive in?
I think I love how God knits things together for his good. Theologically, I love that. And Phil Swain could not have known how perfect his example of chaos and sanctuary that you'll hear in the live show. He'll talk to you, address it completely then and there, what I'm talking about. It was like perfect. It was almost like it was God knew that this was going to be the conversation, and he primed Phil with the perfect example of chaos and sanctuary. And I was just so grateful for that example, and it's such a beautiful, rich example, and it was gorgeous. Yeah. So you'll actually see that example.
Yeah, and if you're listening and you can't see the visual, there's a point at which Phil references a painting. Might be a good one to jump over and watch on YouTube, but if you are listening, that painting will be up on Instagram as well, where you can go and see the visual of that, so that when he does reference it, you can see what he's talking about.
It was just beautiful.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was so cool in every way, and I just love how people's gifts get used in such a dynamic way, and that artist, she has just incredible gifts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, we might jump over now.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, we'll see you in a sec. Here in Australia, the housing crisis continues to deepen, with the median house price in Sydney forecast to reach 1.8 million for the first time over the next year. The Wage Price Index, measuring median wage changes over time, has increased by 24 to 30% over the past decade, while house prices have increased by 100% in that same decade.
Yes, and artificial intelligence and the role that it will play in all of our futures remains unresolved point of our tension. What effects will AI continue to have on our culture, socially, and our financial future?
Russia's war in the Ukraine has now been waged for 1,213 days. Russia have said that it captured the village of, I had a crack at this earlier, Novomykolovka in Ukraine's northeastern Sumy region, where Russian forces have renewed their offensive. The region has been at the centre of the fighting since the Russian invasion in 2022.
And US President Donald Trump has sent thousands of National Guard troops and Marines into Los Angeles amid the ICE raids, sparking nationwide protests and a legal battle over the limits of presidential power.
While Trump held a 250th anniversary parade for the military on his 79th birthday, over 5 million protesters gathered across more than 2,100 cities and towns for what have since been coined the No King's Day protests. Conflict between Israel and Iran has escalated, with images of hypersonic ballistic missiles landing in heavily populated cities, flooding our social media feeds. All the while, Trump seems to be approaching the issue of siding with Israel in a global conflict with the temperament and posture of a 9-year-old. About 1,500 Australians have asked the government for help to flee Iran, and almost as many are attempting to flee Israel amid the escalating crisis.
Israeli airstrikes and gunfire continue to ravage the Gaza Strip, with the Palestinian death toll now at over 62,000. And today, Iran-Israel conflict is alive. US moved the B-2 bombers across the Pacific as Israel jets launch fresh attacks on Iran. America's most feared B-2 stealth bombers have struck Iran's nuclear mountain over 3 separate sites. And Donald Trump warns future attacks will be far greater if Iran doesn't make peace.
So it's pretty chaotic at the moment, and that's going to be the topic of our conversation tonight. Amidst the chaos, where do we find sanctuary? Where do we find peace? Where do we find comfort? Where do we find contentment? And what does this word sanctuary offer us in terms of finding that peace and that comfort? So during this, we're obviously recording a live podcast, but we want to interact with you as well. So this will be going onto the podcast feed. Hello, if you're listening later online. If we can go to the next slide. If you scan that QR code, it'll take you to a Slido, which if you have been to uni at any point in the last 5 to 10 years, you've probably used it before in a lecture. Let us know what you think of the word sanctuary. Like, how do you understand what sanctuary is for you? But also, any questions that you have along the way, drop them in there and they'll come through onto my phone and we'll get to as many as we can during the conversation. But at the end, we're also going to go through any that we haven't got to during the conversation in a Q&A. Yeah.
So, Jonty, we talked about the geopolitical chaos of our world and what's happening at the moment, but chaos isn't just the bigger things that we read about in the newspaper. Chaos happens in and through each of our lives. And I was wondering, what does chaos look like for you at the moment?
So many different ways. I'm glad you asked. For me, a big thing has always been the more I sleep, the less chaotic my life is. I have lots of issues sleeping, always have. And so at the moment, I'm going through a bit of a down phase with my sleep where I'm having a bit of issue sleeping, and so everything feels a little bit more chaotic for me at the moment. What about you, Ness? What does chaos look like for you?
It's a positive chaos. My daughter Ginger's about to have a baby. We've got sort of 4 to 5 weeks to go there, and I'm feeling
super exciting.
Yeah, it's super exciting chaos, but I'm nervous for her, the big push thing. Do you know what I mean? I remember what that's like, and I'm super nervous about that whole pain thing. And she keeps asking me, Mum, how bad does it get? And babe, bad. I think you'd rather having a train go over your legs while you're awake than do that push the kid thing out, but you don't really know that until you've done that. It's a positive chaos. Aurora has recently, over the last 6 months, she's weaned off Lexapro, and then I watched her start to do a bit of an emotional dive and struggle into her new job and into her new role as a speech pathologist. And she took a really brave step just this week, and she decided to go back to her GP and talk to him about what were her options, and she's decided to go back on the gear, and she feels instantly better. Within 24 hours, it was like a complete uplift for her. And as you know, I talk about mental health quite a bit on the podcast, and I'm super proud of her, but that felt like a bit of a chaotic thing in her life, and helping her navigate that seemed quite stressful and anxious making, but it feels like we're coming out of what was a very chaotic time for her. Yeah, super proud of her.
Yeah, so I think, don't worry, Christy, if he does get the camera,
Christy,
it doesn't matter.
don't stress. It's so great. We love him. Oh, yeah, okay, good call, yeah.
So I think what that, just in hearing from both of us, teaches us is that we can think of chaos as this external thing, but it's also an internal thing, and they're both equally as valuable to talk about. We're sort of smart, I guess, the two of us, but we're going to bring on another person who's
really smart.
Just top it off for us a little bit. So can we please all put our hands together for the Rev Phil Swain?
Woohoo!
Thanks for being here. I mean, you're probably going to be here anyway. Just a reminder to send your questions in as we talk as well. Oh, it's not working. Okay.
That's what I was trying to tell you.
Ooh, I thought you were saying there weren't any questions yet. I was like, they'll get in there.
There's no thing for them to write questions on.
Let me have a look. Yeah, that should be as in June 2025. But showing up here for me. But there we go. Give me 2 minutes.
Alex, jacket open, jacket closed.
Is that now working? Great. I had to add a Q&A. Cool.
Good job, Jonty.
Do I just
Alrighty.
thank you again and we'll take off from there?
Future Jonty will figure out how to edit it. Doesn't matter. Thanks for being here, Phil.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting me. Great to be here.
Yeah. Listeners, if you're listening later, Phil's been on our... hey, Jack. Been on our live show in the past, but also probably almost 2 years ago now, we did an episode of the main show as well, a long time ago. So welcome back to the show. For people that might be meeting you for the first time, what do you do in your week, like day to day, and give people a little bit of an insight into who's Phil Swain?
I spend my time serving God in many different ways. I'm one of the two pastors of this church here at Turramurra, but I've also just grown a real passion for supporting other people in the work that they're doing for God as well. So my week can take me wherever in that as well.
Cool. And I guess to ask you the question that we just asked ourselves, what, for you in your day-to-day life, what does chaos kind of feel like for you at the moment?
Yeah, this cut a bit too close to home this week. I actually crashed earlier in the week because I was crashed physically in terms of, there was just been a lot of stuff happening over the last 3 or 4 weeks that just sort of built up that chaos, and my body just went, nah, I got to stop for a bit. And some of that was, there was a community death here a few weeks ago. We've been doing some really deep thinking about the future of the church here, but also just juggling so many balls, in ministry and in life. And I guess it just became a bit too chaotic. My body just went, no, you need to rest for a day or two, and I'll force you to do that by getting sick. So that's been this week in particular. Not only dealing with all the other stuff, but then having to look after myself as well.
It's good that you listen amidst the chaos.
Yes.
Because Jesus is a good example of that, isn't he? He had some chaotic moments in his gig, and then he listened, and then he retreated. I don't know if he got a runny nose, sore throat or a guts ache, but he still retreated, didn't he, to recoup and to fill the tank again?
Yes.
That's a really important thing to do amidst the chaos.
Yeah, we just have to learn to do that a little bit before...
the wheels fall off.
Yeah, the wheels fall off. Yes.
So there's a lot to unpack even in this word sanctuary, and we were talking before as we got together to plan what we're going to talk about. There are so many different avenues that we can take when we talk about what sanctuary is. I guess maybe to start off, as we start to unpack some of them, amidst that chaos for you, Phil, and I'll ask you after as well, Ness, what does sanctuary actually look like to you? Is it an escapism, or is it something to do with safety, or is how do you understand the word sanctuary?
Yeah, I understand it in a number of different ways. If it's for me personally, the way that I find sanctuary in my own life often is through escapism. So when things are so intense, sometimes I just need to step away from that for a little bit. My wife is a book reader, and that's how she loses herself. She'll read books. I play computer games. I'm a gamer, and that's how I sort of step away from life for a little bit. But for me, sanctuary is much more than that as well. There's that sense of safety or protection in sanctuary. The psalmist talks about God being like a sanctuary, a rock or a cave. and we were talking about the old fashioned idea of medieval churches where the church would be a sanctuary. So apparently you couldn't arrest people in a church or on a church site. So people would come and find sanctuary in a church if they felt like they were being unjustly, pursued or charged with something.
And remember Sound of Music? Do you remember in the Sound of Music, Maria and Mr. Von Trapp and the little kidlets all hid in the Abbey? Remember that? And we were talking about a queen. I can't remember which queen, but she was in Westminster.
Yeah.
She was there for a long... Does anyone know which queen that was? Was there for a long period of time doing sanctuary.
Yeah. And I use the example even, it was about 5 or 6 years ago when there was that debate about providing medical help for people in Nauru, and they were bringing them across to Australia, and some churches were saying to them, if you wanted to find sanctuary in our church, we would look after you so that you wouldn't be sent back to Nauru. So that sense of safety or protection. But I also think there's an element of peace in sanctuary as well. So it's not just safety, it's finding, peace for that anxiety or peace for that chaos somehow. So I don't know, there's a whole bunch of stuff that floats around that word. Yeah.
What about you, Ness? What jumps out to you when you think of your own life? What has sanctuary looked like for you?
I think my bedroom. It's like a place I go to if I'm feeling stressed or anxious and I need to regulate. My bedroom. And the other thing that I've recently found huge sanctuary is in my mouth guard, because I grind. Does anyone else grind their teeth? Yeah. Do you wear a mouth guard? Yeah, I've got a big... Does anyone else? Hands up if you do a mouth guard. Do you love your mouth guards? Oh, my gosh. I'm a grinder and a clencher to the point where I break my teeth, and I've got this big gold one up the back that's a whopper because I broke the thing. And so the dog stole my mouth guard, and I found him going... I'm going, this is so gross, licking my slobber from my mouth guard at 4 a.m. one morning as I'd flicked it out of my mouth. Do you all flick yours out in the middle of the night sometimes? Anyway, I've got this new mouth guard that costs $750, and I've got to tell you, it created peace and calm. I know that sounds like a stand-up comedy routine, but I'm telling you the honest truth. I put that bloody thing in my mouth and I went, It just gave me relief because I knew I wasn't going to grind or clench in the night. So my bedroom, my friends, dinner with my family, boring taco night with my kids, Ted Lasso. I've just got into Ted. Is anyone into Ted? I feel like I'm really late to that party, but I've just got into Ted and Hacks. If I need a night to just kind of unwind and I'm not doing uni, I just go, I'm just going to put something funny and cute and sweet. Nobody dies. It's all really happy and it's good. They all behave well. It's sort of lovely.
They've all got lovely manners.
They do, don't they? Not all of them. Yeah. Some of them are a bit dodgy. Yeah, they're probably a couple of mine. Yeah, what about you, Jonty?
Well, I think the thing that I'm reflecting on listening to you both is that there's external and internal sanctuary. And for me, obviously there's the external thing. So similar to Marion, I'm a big reader. I'll very happily just disappear into a book for a day. I don't get the chance to do that very often these days, but we're preparing an episode of this podcast on a book, and I read that in a day the other day because I just will dive in, and it is a place of great peace and calm for me. But then I was also reflecting on where internal sanctuary arrives, and it is often linked to physical places. So home creates great inner sanctuary as well as the external sanctuary. Things like mindfulness and meditation are pretty big for me as well, creating that internal sanctuary. Big on video games and movies as well. So lots of things there.
Routine is something that works really well for me. I have this Monday routine that you know about. It's I don't know when you do your sermon prep and your Sunday prep, but I have this, I do Sunday and then Monday I have to prep for Sunday the following week because I just want to get it in the bag. I want to get the nuts and bolts of it down because the anxiety of not having it prepped just drives me a bit mad. And if someone was to die and then I had to do a funeral or the wheels fell off at church for some reason, at least Sunday's in the bag. Do you know that feeling?
No, I'm completely different, but that's good.
Yeah, no, and you've been doing it for about a decade longer than me too. So I think I'm still just a baby at this gig. So I still don't really fully trust my ability probably at this stage. So it takes me still a fair bit of time. But I find sanctuary in that. Just I suppose because I'm in the Bible, I'm in the Scripture, I'm praying, and I'm waiting on the Spirit. I'm waiting for that prompting for the creative piece from the Spirit to download for me just to pump that out onto the page. And that is so cool for me. And Jonty and I chatted about this as we were preparing this last week, didn't we? Because we talked about the creative process of writing.
Oh, yeah.
And while yours is creative writing and not writing about Jesus, mine is, well, it's still creative writing, isn't it? It's massively creative writing, but I'm waiting on that prompting for it to happen. And I know when I'm onto something because it comes out like one big spew out on the page. It's like, oh, yeah, look at that. Go, Holy Spirit. Smash on that sleigh. It's pretty cool.
That's the clip
so there's
for the week,
sanctuary
by the
in
way.
that.
Yeah, I'll just read through. There's lots of answers to that question of what sanctuary is to people who've come through. I'll just read through a bunch of them. Sanctuary to me is a moment surrounded by complete calm, a perfect combination of location, company, or lack thereof, and state of mind. Someone else said, it means a safe place you can retreat to get away from the chaos of life. Someone else has said, sanctuary is Saturday morning coffee plus Vinnies plus headphones on. That sounds pretty sweet. There are heaps here. I'm just going to pick a couple more. Sanctuary is a place of space, place or space of safety, physically and spiritually. A place of non-violence and harmony. A place of peace and kindness. Another one here. A sanctuary is a place that is always there for me to return to. It's a sacred place for me. It's probably nature. So I think, and there are so many more. We'll dip into some more as we go along. But like, it's such a different thing for every individual, which is really important, I think. Yeah.
I said to Rob before I left, I said, Rob, where do you find sanctuary? And he said, babe, on the leg press, 450 kgs, honey.
That's not an exaggeration either.
No, that's his thing. He puts his earbuds in and off he goes, and he loves it. He just gets into his own self. He feels powerful and strong and connects with his own personal being. And so exercise. Anybody find exercise sanctuary? Yeah, I love it. It's Pilates. Yeah, going to the gym, just running. People get in, who's a runner here? Anybody run? No runners, smart people. Yeah. But you see them in a rhythm. They're doing their thing and I think, wow, man. They're in the vibe, feeling the thing.
Yeah. We started off by going through a whole list of some pretty hectic things that are happening in the world at the moment. So I guess to shift this conversation, we've talked maybe about our own sense of sanctuary, and we'll come back to that at the end as we talk about some faith-based stuff and some where spirituality bleeds into that as well. But when we are confronted with seemingly 50,000 new pieces of news every day that seem to get worse and worse, for each of you, maybe I'll start with you, Phil, how do you approach obviously not wanting to be ignorant, but not wanting to be flooded with negative information, and it can be really overwhelming, and balancing that, wanting to be informed about the world, but still maintaining that sense of calm and peace and sanctuary. Do you have a way of approaching that, or?
Yeah, I'm finding it harder and harder though. I'm have been in the past a very big news person. I'm somebody who likes to keep up with what's going on. And so, yes, I would watch the news in the evening and I'll try and read as much as I can. I'm finding over the last little while that's becoming overwhelming, and I'm struggling now of saying, how do I best balance keeping up with stuff but not being overwhelmed by it, especially when I listen to certain people in the world speak and it just causes me to be upset or angry or frustrated when I hear things that are not true or imbalanced. And so I often will turn it off, and then by turning it off means that I'm becoming less aware. And so I haven't quite learnt that right balance yet. I don't. There will be times where I have to step away from that, but I don't think that that's an ultimate answer, to step away from what's happening in the world and say I'm not going to engage with that at all. So how do we find that right balance of being able to say, yeah, as people of faith, we need to be informed of what's going on and being able to, speak into that situation without getting overwhelmed or frustrated or even misled by some of the stuff that's being thrown around. I don't think I answered your question, but that's the struggle that I sit with at the moment.
What about you, Ness?
It was 11 o'clock today and we were just about to do the benediction and somebody thrust a phone in my face and said, look at this. And it had first hit the news about the bombing of the 3 sites in Tehran. And I thought, I didn't even know how to pray. I would pray. And I was dumbstruck by not knowing what words to use, and how to articulate what I was feeling because I was a bit shocked by it. So my go-to would probably be pray, think about it, pray, but to monitor how much of the input of the world I'm actually taking in because I don't think we're meant to hear it on a half-hour cycle. We're not meant to have it pinging into our phone that many times in a day and to be bombarded with the latest update on how many casualties there are on the Gaza Strip. I just don't think we're meant to be confronted with that much pain and suffering. And I said to Ginger, I rang my family and I said, Ginger, have you heard the news? And she said, Mum, I can't talk about it. I'm about to have a baby. I don't want to know about it. And I kind of got it. I thought, damn girl, you got good boundaries. That's amazing. Yeah, and I said, I fully respect that, absolutely. She said, can you just let me know if I need to evacuate? I said, yeah, babe, or under control. But that's how she's managing it at the moment. She's in the middle of this beautiful stage in her life and about to undergo this incredible life event. And she's going, I'm rebuking listening to the news round the clock like we do because it's not good for my mental health. Yeah. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, for sure. You had your microphone ready to go, so.
It's interesting, we both answered individually, but I also ponder what does it mean to do this as a community? And I'm old enough to remember when Iraq was invaded, and so many similarities. It's just like we haven't learned from history. And I remember at the time saying, because I was a newly minted minister, I think it was about the second year out, and I just said to my church, anybody who needs to come together and talk about this and pray, we'll meet tonight, like the day it happened. And about 2/3 of the church turned up. And I think there is something that it's not only dealing with this alone, but how do we deal with this as a community, whether that's a church community or even our wider community, of saying, this is something that is obviously stirring us up or causing some people anxiety or confusion, or we're just not sure. And how do we do this together is a good question. I don't know if I have good answers, but good questions. Yeah.
And fear, it evokes fear, doesn't it? And helplessness, the whole idea that there's not much we can, as individuals, that we can do, or even as a community here, there's not much we can do other than to pray. So it leads to a sense of helplessness. So I think focusing on hopeful things can definitely help us because there's so much hope in the world. We don't need to. Wouldn't it be great if there was a news channel where we could just get hope news all the time?
Isn't that John Krasinski's thing during COVID?
Yes.
What was it called? Good news, something or other? Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah.
Social media, you can do that.
Yeah, but not all your feed comes through hopeful, does it? It's filtered with junk as well. That's the problem. Yeah.
Yeah. This might be a good time to bring in the spiritual element. I think obviously just speaking personally, I find great sanctuary. I think we've already kind of touched on this in like this physical building, but the community that meets in the building. That obviously this is a church, so we're all meeting for a very particular reason. Phil, you've got a story kind of related to this. Maybe now's a good time to. Do you want me to go get the painting?
Do you want me to do that now, or do you want me to do that a bit later? I've got another story before that. Can I?
Hit me with the first one then. Yeah.
Not wanting to
Stories
direct
on
you
stories.
at all.
Let's go.
I've been playing with this tension in me of how do we as a community wrestle with some of this stuff, but how do we also stand up in moments like this as well? And as people of faith, we're people of justice as well. And if our understanding of sanctuary is to step away from these things because it's too hard, we don't actually get to step into it and somehow stand against what is wrong. And how do we do that well as individuals and as a community while still looking after ourselves? In our conversation before, we said, Jesus is a pretty good example of this. And I actually think Jesus is a really good example of this, because there are times where he did not take the step backwards and step forward and said, what you're doing is not right. You need to include these people. What you're saying is not helpful, or the way that you are treating this situation is not of God. So Jesus would say those things, and then other times he would retreat and need time out because he needed to refill that. But I think it's not as simple as just saying, how do we look after ourselves? But how do we be the people who, are the hands and feet of God standing for justice and righteousness in this world? Sorry, I can tell the other story now if you want.
Well, actually, before you do,
sit on that one.
Someone's sent in a question that relates to this pretty directly. Can sanctuary turn into an unhealthy coping mechanism? Can sanctuary be the one and only thing that settles you in this world? And this ties to something we were talking about earlier as well, before we recorded, that, I'll bring in this idea now. This is kind of what's going to drive us to the end of this conversation, but sanctuary for the sake of sanctuary isn't always super helpful. Like, Ness, if you were binging Ted Lasso constantly and never left your couch, it's doing a really good thing for you in that it's bringing you joy and it's letting you unplug for a bit. But if you dive all the way in and don't come out again, it's actually not super helpful at all. And I think that kind of ties into a little bit of what you're talking about there, Phil. It's not just okay for us to retreat and silo ourselves off from the rest of the world, no matter how chaotic it's getting. We've also got to then enter the world. And there's someone said in here that sometimes sanctuary can be a person. Maybe it's about filling ourselves up in our own sanctuary to go out and be that for somebody else as well.
If sanctuary is protection, it's not only finding the things that make us feel safe and protect us, it's us being the ones who will protect those who need protecting, or standing up for those who need to be stood up for. We're the ones who are providing the sanctuary for others. Yeah.
So if we think about our brothers and sisters, our Iranian brothers and sisters in suburbs not far from us in Sydney, we need to maybe be caring for them, being the hands and feet of Jesus into their dilemma right now, while they're wondering what their family and loved ones are doing in Tehran right now, unable to communicate with them. Maybe we need to walk alongside them. Yeah. Definitely.
And that's a whole other topic of conversation, but how to do that well. How not to assume that you know the best way of doing that and come charging in, but how to actually do that in a way that's helpful for people that need help. Yeah. Now's probably a good time for your other story, Phil.
Okay.
Yeah.
Muller, could you do me a favour? Could you just grab that painting up there? And I'll explain why. I had something happen this week that just seemed to fit perfectly with what was tonight, even though the two are unrelated. I was talking to our office administrator here at Turramurra about her daughter, and she was saying her daughter wants to do art and become an artist. And I wanted to encourage her, and so I said out of the blue, I'll buy a painting off her, I'll commission a painting. And anyway, she got very excited by this idea, and they said, what do you want the painting of? And I went, I don't know. Here's the Bible reading that I used last Sunday. This was about a week ago. And the Bible reading was from Hebrews chapter 6, verse 19, which you would all know as that we have an anchor for our souls, strong and secure, that reaches into the very presence of God, or the holies of God. Or you could even say into the very sanctuary of God if you wanted to. Anyway, she went off, and I'll see if I can put it up on the big screen for the people who are in the building. This is the picture that she created in a day. And there's just two things that really just blew me away as I looked at this picture. And if you just look at this picture, you might get something out of that as well. If you want a good copy of it, get the weekly email. Oh no, this is on a podcast. Sorry. Stop doing that. Cut that part out.
No, I'll leave it in. Link down below.
There's two parts of this that blew me away. The top part of it's of a ship in a storm. And I can understand that. That's the chaos in life. She's got the anchor coming down here, holding that ship secure amongst the storm. And that's what our faith is like. I really like that. But the thing that really touched me was where the anchor is anchored and how beautiful it is down there. You know, it's almost like that there's this, I got out of it anyway, that the heart of God is a place of beauty and a place of calmness. And it just made me think of that story that sometimes scuba divers say it can be a massive storm on the surface. But if you go down, the storm disappears. You know, it's different if you go deep. And I think there was just something for me that was really speaking into that, to sort of go, in amidst the chaos, is there some way of finding sanctuary by going deep into the heart of God? You know, the closer we immerse ourselves into God and God's love, there's something there that we will find a beauty, a sanctuary, a peace in that. I just found it very moving, and I just wanted to share that picture with you.
It's a beautiful story. Thanks, Phil. It's a beautiful story. It's wonderful.
We'll put a, if you're listening to this later, we'll throw it up on the Instagram as well. People can have a look there. I think, that brings us to, I think the point that I wanted to land on with all of this is kind of what I said before, really, that, and this is going to sound really egotistical, I didn't plan this, but it's kind of the heart of what Filthy Hope is about, and what that concept means, is that sanctuary, for me, is really, really, really important in filling up and finding that safety and that peace. But in the same way that you can't binge Ted Lasso constantly for the rest of your life, you've then got to go out, and you can't hide away from the world forever. And like you mentioned earlier, we can look to so many examples in Scripture of not just Christ, but there's a handful of other role model characters in Scripture who, when it gets a bit intense, they peace out for a day sometimes and don't come back until they've spent time with God or prayed or whatever they need to do to reconnect with themselves. And I want to, for people that were here at Taramara Uniting, was Sonny here last week or the week before? Last week, talked about this idea that the presence of God isn't this external thing, but it's an internal thing. For me, I think sanctuary, when I think about it in relation to that, this idea that God isn't out there, God is in here. Sanctuary is actually connecting with God already there. And then, I think Sonny also used the analogy of being a lantern and letting that lantern out to, Annie's nodding, she remembers. I don't think it's enough to, once you've found sanctuary, keep that to yourself. I think it's then to let it out and show other people. Yeah.
Share the light, brother.
That's right. Do you have any other thoughts, Ness, before we jump into some more Q&A to wrap this up?
I have a sanctuary story.
Yeah.
It's tied in with a bit of psychobabble. When I was in the depths of my child abuse stuff, I think I've told you many times I've been to Disneyland. I've been married 36 years, so most years in that 36 years, so I've been to Disneyland that many times. I've lost count now. But we went there to break our jet lag because we're on the way to Kentucky to visit Rob's family, but also because it's a place where I could actually find peace. And I was going there before I became a Christian. So I hadn't found Jesus yet, but I'd find peace in Disneyland. And it was on this one park bench, this one green bench. Has anyone been to Disneyland? Lots of green benches. Yeah, go Joe. Lots of green benches, but there's this one green bench that's right near where the Christmas tree gets set up. And I would sit there and I would take my 2 little internal children and I would place them underneath the bench and I would just sit in that chair and I would feel safe. And it was like the only place that I would feel safe in the whole world. And I kept going back to that bloody bench. I've been back to that bench so many times, and I feel that I can manufacture that same feeling of safety at that bench. It's just like nothing bad ever happens at Disneyland. There's no mean people at Disneyland, and it truly is one of the happiest places in the world, they say. And for me, I can actually take myself almost spiritually to the green bench. I don't have to actually physically be there anymore. I can actually just pray and say, Lord, I need that same feeling that I get when I go to the bench in Disneyland. It'll save me 4K if we can do that now, Lord. And I can do that now. And it's a really powerful thing. So it's like a combination of using the physical and the spiritual all in one thing to give me great peace. And I use it a lot. If I'm feeling anxious or nervous, that's what is often going on for me. Yeah, I'm on the bench.
I really like that image of like an external thing, whether like a physical place, becoming an internal thing that you can take with you. I think that's really powerful and probably something that a lot of us could probably relate to. It's not the green bench at Disneyland, but it's something, whether it's a place or a thing or a person. Yeah. Thank you guys for being so willing to share and open. Last chance to get some more questions, and I've got heaps that we're going to try and get through some of them. It's a good one here. Can you actually have sanctuary without chaos? Can you understand peace without internal or external conflict or irritation? I think that's a really interesting question. Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, because without the chaos, we may not need to retreat into sanctuary. I don't know, there's probably something really deeply theological in the way that we could answer that in terms of sin.
Just going theodicy just then. I thought, oh no, please can we not go there?
I don't know, but I don't have a great answer for that one actually, but what do you guys think in terms of that idea that to have sanctuary, yet the chaos is actually necessary as well?
Well, they had sanctuary in the garden, didn't they? You know, until they did the fruit salad routine, there was big sanctuary, I'm thinking, and then they did the fruit and all hell broke loose, right? Literally.
I was going to go back a chapter earlier in Genesis 1. It talks about the chaos and the Spirit moving over the waters. And I think there's a general rule that God tries to move from chaos to some sort of order or peace. Now, I don't think it needs to be massively chaotic for God to do that. We can start off with a little bit of chaos and God can still help us move towards peace. But yes, it doesn't matter where you are on that scale. You know, God wants us to feel that sense of peace and sanctuary and security in our lives and will help us to do that.
And even the chaos, I think that's even meant to be there as well. Yeah. It's through the chaos that we grow, don't we? And we rely on God and all things are knitted together for his good and glory.
Yes.
So I think the chaos is actually designed to be there. It's what we do with it.
Not that we want the chaos for anybody.
Of course not.
But yes, God can work through the chaos.
Totally.
A few more things from here. Sanctuary equals presence, no rush, deep connections with nature and people. Sanctuary is found when the pursuit of day-to-day ceases. Someone here says, I sometimes feel like a bad person when I just can't take the bad news anymore and find myself not really caring as I'm so bad news fatigued. I think that's such a common thing that people feel. In your opinion, should sanctuary be proactive or reactive? I think both. I think we need to be proactive and know and have our, sometimes if it's a routine or a place or a thing, or a spiritual practice, know what those things are and be proactive about it. But sometimes we also need to be reactive. Sometimes where life throws us chaotic things and we just have to react. What about you guys? Going all the way back to what we talked about at the beginning with our own sense of sanctuary, would you reflect on those being more proactive or reactive?
Combination of both.
I think it depends on the situation, yeah.
For me, I think it's better if it's proactive, but too often it's reactive. I don't think it matters if it's either, but I think, I would like it to be more proactive rather than me going, I need to step away now.
A safe place or a mindset where you can think a bit clearer without distraction and breathe more easily. Sanctuary, I never search for sanctuary because it's a bit boring. I want adventure. I want chaos. I don't know who you are, but nice.
I used to live like that and it burnt me out, brother. Warning.
We've kind of covered these ones. Is creating sanctuary for ourselves in an area where we are quite sheltered from the bigger world chaos necessary, or should we be looking to create it for others? Great question. I think we kind of already touched on that in terms of...
Excellent question.
Bringing that sanctuary to other people or inviting other people into our own, again, whatever that sanctuary looks like, but having it open to people as well. Maybe one more and then we'll wrap this up. We've done that one. Someone says, save sanctuary for when you're dead. It's time to live.
Can I add a quick story on that one?
Yeah.
Very early in my ministry, I had to go to a minister's retreat at a Catholic, it's not called a nunnery, what is it called? Monastery with nuns in it, yeah. And part of the deal was we could go there as long as we had a 30-minute session with the Mother Superior one-on-one. And we were all so scared of this. Anyway, I had my session with her and she said, how do you pray? And I said, look, I'm too busy to pray. I can't sit still. I said, I feel like all my prayers are just chatting with Jesus as we walk from one thing to the next thing on the road. And she said something that I think still sits with me and fits in with that answer. She said, for some people, that is what prayer is about. And maybe for some people, sanctuary isn't the quiet stillness, stepping away from everything, but it's just being that awareness of what's happening in you and your life. And it can be from rushing from one thing to the next thing. But as long as you're being aware of that. She did also say to me, there'd be a time in my life where the sitting and being quieter would be special as well. She was right. That has come. But at that moment in my life, she didn't say, no, you have to stop. You have to sit still. She said, no, God will meet you wherever you're at.
Wise woman.
The last question, I think, to wrap this up is a really great one to finish on. Does the responsibility to create sanctuary fall squarely on us, or is it meant to come from God? I picked that as our last question because I think that links to what I was just talking about earlier, that both. Because when we look inwards and when we connect with the deepest, most true sense of who we are as image bearers of God, that is connecting with, like Sonny was saying last week, that's connecting with God. So I think it's a weird hybrid of both of those things, that in truly actually humbling ourselves and opening ourselves to the presence of God already within us, then that's kind of both. I don't know if that quite makes sense. It's a bit sci-fi, but that's my jam.
And if we think about sanctuary as a peaceful place of refuge, there's plenty of biblical text that talks about, under the wings, hiding, sneaking under there. God will give us that protection. So then sanctuary ultimately probably does come from being in the presence of God.
Any final thoughts, Phil? I think that's just about us.
I think God allows us to think that we have a lot to do with this. But the reality is that God does so much behind the scenes, and we are just benefits of God's blessing and God's mercy. So yes, I think it is up to both of us, but I think God's very, very kind in how God offers us, this blessing and this sanctuary.
Well, thanks once again for the conversation, guys. And thank you to everyone for your questions. They were great help. There we have it. That was the recording from our live event.
Yeah.
By the time this comes out, it will have been just about a month ago, I think, when we did that. So, yeah, just once again, thanks to everyone involved for being so hospitable and particularly all the people that volunteered to help out to make it happen. Yeah.
Good convo.
Really good convo. Like I said before, we've got like so many questions that we didn't get to and lots of not only questions, but people answering the question of what sanctuary looks like for them.
Yeah, do you want to share some of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and also, I'm not shouting names out because the thing we use makes it anonymous. So I don't know who you all are, but thank you for sending in all your questions and answers. I think sanctuary is protecting people from harm. It's not something we seek for ourselves, but for others. It's interesting. Does God call us to make them our sanctuary? If so, how do we start to do that? So how do we start to make God our sanctuary?
How would you answer that?
That's there's so many ways to answer that because God is so many different things to so many different people. And, to me, God is bigger than any definition that we can give God. So you name it, any one fragment of God that you hold on to at any particular time has a different way in and a different way of approaching your life. But I mean, for me, if I'm going to get practical, I've spoken a fair bit on this show about how I use prayer and meditation.
Yep.
And so for me, being in the presence of God isn't about yapping on the end of the phone and then hanging up before God has a chance to answer. It's about sitting there and actually listening and being open to hearing God's voice. And so for me, I find great sanctuary in that. Often I don't get a chance. So it's not a daily thing for me. At one point it was. But these days it's probably 2 or 3 times a week. I spend even only 5-10 minutes sometimes. And sometimes it takes longer because in the chaos of life, the head noise that we all carry is deafening sometimes, and it takes a while to let that just settle.
Yep.
And this is going to sound really nerdy, but so I'm starting to get peripherally interested in something called transcendental meditation, which. And I'm going to butcher this. So again, I apologize. If you are a proponent of transcendental meditation, I apologize. But if you are interested in what it actually is, don't listen to this. Go and actually find out what it is. But it talks about, it's linked to the scientific idea of the unified field, where as science gets deeper and deeper and deeper and smaller and smaller and smaller, it in theory is gesturing towards something called the unified field, where all disciplines and all matter converge in oneness. And transcendental meditation is about allowing your conscience to settle down into that oneness, which is, and people talk about like an ocean of conscience, an ocean of pure good. And as a Christian, I look at that and go, yeah, that makes complete sense to me in terms of connecting with the base nature of reality. If God is the very fabric of reality that we live in, it's about removing distraction and getting in touch with the base level of reality, the fabric that we live in, the see, smell, touch, taste of the world, and identifying God's presence in that.
That's so interesting, Jonty. I remember reading an autobiography about a man who was a neurosurgeon, who died on the operating table, had a life and death experience during that time, came back, went through all this rehab from the brain surgery, and described being with God in that state. And he described being in the soup of life.
Yeah.
And called it Om.
Yeah.
Described it as his only word he could come up with was Om.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I was really moved when I read that. I wish I could tell you who that was. It's Dr. Somebody. When I read that book, it kind of, I started praying and meditating using Om as a central point to focus my meditation on, and just repeating Om. And it was so calming, almost like I think the vibration of the Om was like settling of your vagus nerve as well. It was really powerful. Yeah, that's incredible, Jonty.
Yeah.
We need to do a whole thing on transcendental meditation.
I'm only just starting to look into it. So
Yeah, that's going to be a good episode.
As I get into it more. And I actually know a couple of friends that have practiced transcendental meditation, so I might talk to them and
talk about sanctuary.
Yeah.
Find your sanctuary.
Yeah.
I've started waking up in the night, and but it's not just waking up because I need a wee or waking up because I'm hot or cold or restless. It's like the spirit wakes me and wakes me to pray for a specific thing. It's really a bit irritating at first, but it's kind of cool. I'm getting with because it keeps happening and I'm going, oh, well, okay, I can't control this. I'll just go with it. Because initially I started thinking I'm just going to be so buggered when I wake up in the morning. I'm finding that I'm not, which is so interesting. And I've been putting my watch on to measure my sleep.
Yep.
And I have these wakeful periods in the night where the Lord wakes me about a specific thing to pray about, and it can be one or two things. And I've got 3 things at the moment that he woke me about last night, and I'm praying for these things, and they're people. I'm praying for people, and then the alarm goes off. So I've gone back to sleep, but at the time I'm praying for the people, and it's so interesting that my conscious mind is going, oh, shit, I'm going to be buggered tomorrow. I've got to do the podcast with Jonty. I've got to be bring my A game. I'm going to be absolutely buggered because it's bloody 2:40 in the morning. This is awful. But I wake up to the alarm. I check my Garmin sleep thing and it says, excellent. You've had excellent REM. I've gone, how is that? How is that possible? And I don't feel buggered like I've had a disturbed sleep or anything. And I just think it's God's provision. And I think they're in those moments. I've got no idea how long they last, how long the prayer lasts, because I'm not looking at my clock at that stage. I'm like in this sleep-awake thing.
Yeah.
And then I'm down again.
Yeah.
Have you had that? But I think that's sanctuary.
Well, yeah, I mean, the only thing I was just going to say is like, and we did a whole episode about sleep, is I find REM sleep fascinating because your brain activity is just as hyper as when you're physically awake. So it's like a way of and science is still not entirely sure actually why.
It's processing,
why
isn't
do
it?
we sleep is and why, but yeah, so it's almost like you're awake, but your physical body is in deep shutdown. And that's why one of the reasons REM sleep is so important, and they're like things like alcohol and other substances and will basically block your access to REM sleep, which is why if you've been out drinking, you go crash and you sleep for 15 hours, you wake up, you still feel
Hit by a truck.
smashed. Yeah. But yeah, I it's such I don't know, just that image of your brain being still like wide awake and active while your physical body is resting is an interesting way of framing and understanding how that prayer thing's happening, because you're getting physical rest,
right?
But your brain's still active and connecting through prayer.
And so I woke in the morning and I remembered it all.
Yeah.
And then I wasn't anxious in my sleep, but I became anxious in my waking, because then I was worried about the people that I'd prayed for. And so then I reached out to one of them and I said, hey, babe, 2:40 this morning, praying for you. How'd your night go? I knew some big stuff had happened for her in the day. How'd your night go? A big medical thing had happened. How'd your night go? best sleep, excellent, no problems, feeling great on top of it all. I went, oh, what is that? You know, because I kind of thought she was going to say, yeah, had a rough time. I've got these symptoms, and these symptoms. Thanks for praying for me. But it wasn't anything. It was she had this great night. And then I was left going, relief. I felt relieved and I just went, oh, amen, that's great. Maybe that's just an answer to prayer. I don't know. I'm not God. Can't work that piece out. I can only just reflect on what my experience is. You know, it's cool.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
It's happening a lot at the minute for me.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So I guess like to answer the question, how do we go about finding sanctuary in God? I think being open to God answering that question for us.
Right.
Because we might have an idea of, I'm sure you wouldn't have chosen to be awake at 2:40 every morning.
Heck no. No.
Just being open to how God is going to provide that for you.
Yeah, yeah.
Because we might have an idea of it, but it's not what God has in mind.
And is it God in that circumstance, is it God ushering me into sanctuary with him? Because I don't think I'm electing it. I think the Spirit's prompting me in my sleep to get into conversation with God. I wonder if it's like a nudge in the night. Hey, Ness, you ready for a convo? Let's have that convo. Let me see what's on your heart right now. I don't know. I made that up. I don't know if that's got any theological base at all other than just my experiential knowing, which I think sometimes is enough.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. One last question.
Yeah.
Again, apologies. There's so many. We might come back to this. Maybe
Yes.
we'll do a bonus thing later and
love that.
do like a 20-minute, half-hour thing where we just answer more questions. But for now, here's one more. It's sometimes hard to share a rhythm or practice that helps you find presence or connection with God. How do you do it in a non-egotistical or judgmental way? So how do we share with other people what works for us in a way that isn't like...
Don't sound like a wanker.
Yeah.
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 I know. How do you?
I think it's just about the way you frame it, not as here's what you should do, but just here's what I do.
This is what I do. This is my experience.
This is what it does for me.
Yeah. I think that's good.
It's a little bit like and this is because what my brain spends half the time thinking about, but if you think about the conversations you have with people about movies, right? I can't stand people that, like, if you go, oh, I haven't seen The Godfather or whatever, and they go, what? You haven't seen The Godfather? How? Like, you call yourself a fan of movie, and all of a sudden they're berating you because you haven't seen a thing.
Oh, have I done that to you about Bridgerton?
No.
You sure?
I mean, maybe, but I don't
Maybe.
care,
Sorry, Jonty.
As opposed to going like, oh, you haven't seen The Godfather. And I have seen The Godfather, but it's just the first thing that came to mind, right? Oh, you haven't seen The Godfather. Oh, you're going to love it. I love it because when I watched it, I got this, and this out of it. If you do ever decide to watch it, let me know because I'd love to talk to you about it.
I love that.
It's two completely different ways of
Yes.
recommending something.
Yes.
Right? And I think we can sometimes fall into that trap of going, well, this works for me, so I have to not only share it with other people, but I'm like, why wouldn't that other person already do it? Because it works for me.
This is the only way.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I think just sharing how it works, like what benefit have you got out of it?
Yeah, that's good.
And also not forcing it on people that maybe don't want to hear it. Like having a conversation with a friend over coffee is that they're actually going to want to hear what you have to say, right? As opposed to someone you just met at uni or you're in a tutorial with, or someone you just met at church for the first time, or a friend at the pub and whatever, and all of a sudden you're yakking into their ear about something they don't care about. Like read the room a little bit as well, I think.
100%.
What about you? What do you reckon about this?
Can you read the question again?
Yeah, so it's sometimes hard to share a rhythm or practice that helps you find presence or connection with God. How do you do it in a non-egotistical or judgmental way? So like you said, how do you not be a wanker about sharing these things?
Yeah. I just, if I'm asked, I'll share.
Yeah.
But I don't often just open up about that stuff because I think it's like my relationship with God. It's like I don't go talking about my intimate relationship with Rob to everybody, but my relationship with God's my relationship, and the way that I interact with God is so personal, And I don't actually want to be judged because I've felt that judgment as a person that's experienced God profoundly in probably what we'd call a Pentecostal kind of a way.
Yeah.
And then to find myself in the Uniting Church and have had some really big Pentecostal experiences of the Spirit, like many. And it was my first love, and it's how I know God to be God. And to be judged about that and to be shut down and told that that's wrong, that pisses me off and hurts my feelings. And I tend to not share too much unless I'm asked. Yeah. So thanks for asking. So definitely, I think the thing that's been happening in my sleep recently, that's only been this year that stuff's been happening in a rhythm. And there's some big stuff going on in my church at the moment. And so I think God is priming me that way. And that's okay. I'm just being open to that. I don't feel like I'm doing anything other than just responding. And definitely my prayer life, I pray a lot. I pray in the shower. I love a shower prayer. Love it. It's something about water and just being nude and the warmth of the water, and just I often cry and pray. I've done that in the shower and do that. Walking in nature and just seeing nature, breathing the air and feeling. I think you talked earlier about touch, smell, taste, all of that. Getting in tune with my senses and God in that. Looking for the divine in things. Looking in the divine in all things around me at times helps me plug in. It sort of sounds a bit super spiro, but I don't know. I don't know any other way to do it. That's how I do it. Exercise.
Yeah.
Exercise. I love that feeling of my body, the body that God's given me, able to do movement and to breathe and to push heavy weight and to get my heart rate elevated and all of that. I love that sense of equipping. So I love that. And I feel like God gives me this thing, and we connect there in the sweat and the heart rate and the lifting. That sounds weird, but it's a thing.
No, I totally.
I have a thing there.
Totally
I don't know how else
that.
really to describe that.
Yeah.
Singing. I love singing in the car. The bigger, the louder, the bolder. Singing, knock out some worship songs. I love it.
Nice.
Yeah, that's the way I do it. And writing my sermons and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love, because I'm paid to be in the Bible a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty lucky. What a gift, right? I get to be reading scripture a lot and trying to work it out.
Yeah.
Put it into a digestible way. You know, seeing God in others. Have I answered the question?
Definitely. Yeah.
That's all I know how to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe for people that weren't at our live show that have just heard the recording of that show for the first time here on the podcast, that question goes to you as well. Let us know, filthyhopepod@gmail.com. What's sanctuary mean to you? How do you find sanctuary in God? How do you find sanctuary physically? How do you find sanctuary emotionally, spiritually? And how do you, something I talked about, I think, in that live show was carrying that sanctuary with us.
Yeah.
What does that look like for you? What does it look like for you to extend that sanctuary to the people around you? Let us know. We'd love to continue the conversation.
I've got one more.
Yeah, hit me with it.
I love, if I'm home by 5 to 6 and Slink's home at 5 to 6, I will hear her yell out, "Pit!" And I know what that means. And for me, this is a physical sanctuary. The two of us know that it's like the call, like, wah, wah, wah. It's like she's calling the call. It's pit is the call. And what that means is, get ready, provide your armpit on the lounge. The dog comes, she comes.
Yep.
I sit on the lounge with my arms like out to the side, and she snuggles into my armpit.
Yeah.
The dog's there. I can have the cat breathing on my left side over on this shoulder, and the dog comes up and does licky face, and Rora's snuggled into my armpit, and we watch the news together. And there's kind of this thing that happens, and I feel for both of us it helps us regulate after often what are big days.
Yeah.
We can regulate together on the lounge, and there's this like coming together in this love moment with the critters, with each other. Yeah, and God's in that, I'm sure. It's beautiful.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Pit!
That's so funny.
I hope she's okay with me sharing that. I'm sure she is.
Yeah, I'm sure. We'll cut it out if she's not.
She'll be right.
Yeah. Thanks for being open to share today, but also last Sunday.
Was a ripper.
And again, shout out to Phil for joining us on that
What a
conversation.
champion.
If you want to continue to support this show, to do what we do, keep praying for us. We really appreciate that. Leave a 5-star review. Write that up on Apple Podcasts if you've got a couple of minutes, and we'll give you a shout out on the show as well. If you're watching here on YouTube, subscribe. That just, same thing as the reviews, just boosts our algorithm a little bit and gets the show out to new people. But most of all, as I think I keep saying, like if you get value out of this, if this is a show that you enjoy or like fuels conversation for you, like something I love hearing is the conversations that other people have had without us because of the show.
Oh, I love that.
Share this with someone that you think will get something out of it.
Fantastic.
Word of mouth, Next week, we are going to have, I can't remember because it's all out of order. Something will be next week, and it's going to be great. Join us tomorrow for Into the Word. That continues through. At that point, we'll be nearing the end of our Acts season. So join us there tomorrow, if not right back here on Tuesday for another episode of Filthy Hope.
Excellent.
See you then, Ness.
See you, brother.
And see you next week, our listeners.
This is a breath